Have you ever caught yourself wondering, when did everything change between me and my child? Maybe you raised them with everything you had, your love, your energy, your sacrifices, and yet here you are in this stage of life where peace should be your closest companion. But instead, you feel drained, disrespected, or even broken. If that question has ever passed through your mind, you're not alone. It's one of the hardest, most heartbreaking realizations a parent can face. But sometimes the kindest thing we can do for ourselves is to let go. Not with bitterness, not with anger, but with clarity, with courage, and most importantly, with love for our own well-being. This conversation isn't about blame. It's not about turning your back on your children at the first sign of trouble. Every parent-child relationship has ups and downs. But when the hurt goes deep and keeps repeating, when your heart is constantly carrying a quiet sadness, it might be time to reevaluate where you stand. Today we're going to talk about signs, not subtle hints, but clear, unmistakable signals that a line has been crossed again and again. And yes, in some cases, the healthiest step forward may be to walk away completely. Not out of spite, but out of self-respect. Let's start with one of the most painful yet common signs. When respect disappears, it can begin quietly. They cut you off mid-sentence, roll their eyes when you share a memory, laugh at your values, or dismiss your advice like it's silly or outdated. Maybe they talk over you when you're trying to speak, or ignore your boundaries entirely. Calling only when they want something, never when you just need to talk. At first, you might brush it off. They're just busy, you tell yourself. Maybe I'm being too sensitive. But over time, that pattern becomes a scar on your spirit. And that's not just disrespect. It's erosion. Erosion of the bond you spent decades building. Erosion of your sense of dignity. You deserve better than to be treated like a burden. You deserve better than to be tolerated in your own child's presence. Real love, mature love, honors your humanity. If your child repeatedly shows you that they have no interest in honoring yours, it's okay to say, "This is not the relationship I want in my life anymore." And sometimes it's not about raised voices or blatant insults. It's quieter than that. It shows up as the way you feel after spending time with them. So let's talk about that next. How your mental and emotional health feels after interacting with your child. Do you feel calm? Do you feel seen? Or do you feel like you have to walk on eggshells, bracing for the next criticism or cold silence? Do you spend hours after a phone call replaying their words, wondering what you did wrong? Or beating yourself up because you couldn't make the conversation go just right? The truth is, emotional harm doesn't always scream. It whispers. It whispers in the form of anxiety, of feeling small, of questioning your worth even when you know deep down you've tried your best. If every interaction leaves you feeling less than, less joyful, less stable, less whole, that's not just sad. That's a signal. A signal that the relationship isn't healing, it's harming. You have a right to protect your peace. You have a right to say, "This connection is costing me more than it gives." That's not weakness. That's wisdom. But maybe the hardest part to admit is when your core values, the foundation of who you are constantly clashing with your child's behavior or beliefs. Now, we all know no two people see the world the same way, and it's completely normal for parents and adult children to have differences. But I'm not talking about who you voted for, or whether the dishes should be done after dinner or the next morning. I'm talking about the deep stuff. Things like honesty, loyalty, kindness, integrity. Maybe you were the kind of parent who taught your child to always speak the truth, to stand by family, to show compassion, And now you see them lie, without blinking, manipulate others for gain, or treat people with cold indifference, including you. It's heartbreaking when the person you raised no longer reflects the values you tried so hard to teach. It's even more painful when those differences create not just distance, but disrespect. When you find yourself hiding parts of who you are just to keep the peace, or staying silent to avoid judgment, it's time to ask yourself, what am I sacrificing just to hold on to this relationship? Because if you're giving up your peace, your authenticity, or your moral compass, then it's not love. It's survival. And love should never cost you your soul. Now, let me pause and say this, loud and clear. Walking away from your own child may be one of the hardest decisions you'll ever make. And it's not one to take lightly. But just because someone is your blood doesn't mean they get a free pass to hurt you endlessly. You don't stop being a parent when you let go. You become a protector of your heart, of your spirit, of the life you still have left to live. And you do have so much life left. Life that should be filled with people who see you, value you, and bring out the best in you, not the worst. You are not here to be anyone's emotional punching bag. You are not here to be manipulated by guilt or endlessly disrespected just because you're the parent. You are here to live, to laugh again, to feel light in your chest and clarity in your mind. And sometimes, that means choosing distance over destruction. So if anything I've said so far has struck a chord in your heart, I want you to know. You're not alone, and you're not a bad parent for thinking this way. You're a brave one. And if you're still wondering how to move forward, we're going to keep walking through more signs and stories together, because you deserve to understand exactly what you're facing and what your options truly are. Sometimes what hurts the most isn't what's said, it's what's missing. That empty space where love used to be. You reach out and get no reply. You share good news and they don't respond. You ask for a little help, a ride, a visit, just some of their time. And you're met with silence, or worse, excuses. If being in touch with your child feels like chasing someone who doesn't want to be caught, that's a heavy burden to carry. And the truth is, relationships that are one-sided rarely survive without someone feeling invisible. You shouldn't have to beg for attention, for kindness, or for the smallest effort of care. That's not connection. That's emotional starvation. When you're constantly giving and rarely receiving, it wears on your soul. And you might start to feel like maybe you're asking for too much. But let me remind you, you're not. Wanting mutual love and respect isn't selfish. It's human. It's healthy. And if they've made it clear through repeated neglect or emotional absence that you're not a priority, then it's okay to ask yourself, why am I still holding on? Because relationships aren't meant to drain us. They're meant to support us. That brings me to another important signal. It's when being around your child leaves you feeling emotionally exhausted instead of uplifted. There's a kind of tired that no nap can fix. It's the kind you feel deep in your chest after every interaction. Maybe it's because they constantly complain, dump their problems on you, or expect you to fix everything while offering nothing in return. Maybe they demand your time, your energy, your money, but never once ask how you are doing. And it's not just fatigue. It's dread. It's that sinking feeling when the phone rings. It's the knot in your stomach before a holiday gathering. It's the way your body tenses when you think about them walking through your door. You deserve better than that. You deserve to feel safe in your own home, calm in your own heart. And when every interaction leaves you worn down, it's not just inconvenient. It's harmful. That kind of emotional toll can impact your sleep, your blood pressure, your appetite, your joy. Over time, it's not just the relationship that suffers, it's your health. And no one, not even your child, has the right to take that from you. Now, sometimes the problem runs even deeper. It's not just emotional exhaustion or lack of attention, it's manipulation. This one can be hard to spot at first, especially when it's subtle. They twist your words. They rewrite history. They make you feel like you're the one who's always wrong, even when your heart knows otherwise. They guilt trip you, saying things like, "You never did enough for me," or "If you loved me, you'd..." They use your love as a weapon, not as a bond. And suddenly you find yourself second-guessing everything, wondering if maybe you are the problem, wondering if maybe you are the one who needs to apologize. Again, let me say this plainly. Manipulation is not love, it's control. And control has no place in a healthy relationship, especially not one between a parent and a child. If they only call when they want something, if they use your past mistakes against you every chance they get, or if they make you feel guilty for setting healthy boundaries, that's not just toxic, that's emotional abuse. And you are allowed to walk away from it. You are allowed to say, "I will not be played like this anymore." You are allowed to protect your clarity, your peace of mind, and your self-worth. Now let's talk about something that might not sound dramatic, but carries a heavy weight: when you simply can't trust them. Trust is one of those invisible threads that holds a relationship together. Without it, everything frays. You might start to notice they lie to you. Sometimes small lies, sometimes big ones. Maybe they borrow money and never pay it back. Maybe they make promises they never intend to keep. Or they tell you one thing, but do another behind your back. Each time it happens, a little part of you pulls away, until eventually, you're left constantly bracing for disappointment. And that's no way to live. Trust isn't a luxury. It's a foundation. And when it's broken over and over again, it creates a slow but steady ache that eats away at the love you once felt so strongly. You're not asking for perfection. None of us are. But if they repeatedly violate your trust without remorse, without change, that's not something to ignore. That's a sign. A sign that you might be holding on to hope instead of reality. And sometimes what breaks the bond completely is something darker. Something we don't like to talk about. But we must. Abuse. Whether it's verbal, emotional, financial, or physical, any form of abuse is unacceptable. It doesn't matter who it's coming from. There is no excuse, no justification. You might hear them say, "You made me angry," or "You're too sensitive," or "It's just how I am." But none of those words erase the damage. No adult child has the right to make you feel unsafe in your own home. No one has the right to insult you, threaten you, or treat you like you're worthless. And if you've endured that, first of all, I'm so sorry. Second, you are allowed to choose yourself. You are allowed to say no more. Not just allowed, you must. Protecting yourself is not abandoning them. It's rescuing you. It doesn't matter how old you are. Your life still belongs to you. And you deserve to spend this chapter surrounded by people who lift you up, not tear you down. So if you've recognized yourself in any of this, if your heart has been quietly whispering, "Yes, this is me," know that you're not being dramatic. You're not overreacting. You're waking up. You're starting to see what you've been tolerating in the name of love. And that clarity is a gift. It's the first step toward reclaiming your peace, your strength, and your dignity. You are not alone in this. And you do not have to carry this pain forever. There is a way forward. And together, we'll keep walking it, one step at a time. There's a kind of grief that comes not from someone dying, but from realizing they're no longer who you thought they were. That's often what it feels like when you recognize that your own child, the one you held in your arms, the one you once sang to sleep, has become someone who no longer treats you with care or even basic decency. It's painful, it's confusing, and sometimes it's quietly devastating. But it's also a turning point. And that brings us to another clear sign. When your child no longer supports your growth or even resents it. You may have decided to start going to a community group, take a new class, travel a little more, or even just speak up for yourself more often. And suddenly they act irritated. Maybe they mock your choices or downplay your interests. They might even say things like, "What are you doing that for at your age?" What they don't say outright, but what you feel loud and clear, is that they're uncomfortable with you growing, thriving, becoming more than what they expect you to be. Silent, convenient, dependent. When your child resents your happiness, questions your right to enjoy life, or subtly sabotages your confidence, it's not love. It's control disguised as care. And that's not a relationship worth holding on to. Real love celebrates your joy. It stands beside you and says, "I'm proud of you." If you never hear that from your own child, ask yourself why. And ask yourself how long you've been dimming your own light to keep them comfortable in the shadows. Now let's talk about something even more subtle, but equally damaging. Selfishness. We all know life isn't perfectly balanced. Sometimes one person gives more than the other. But what happens when it's always you doing the giving? You listening, you helping, you sacrificing. And they? They just take. They don't ask how you're feeling. They don't check in on your needs. They forget your birthday. Or worse, remember it only when they want something. You become a resource, not a relationship, a wallet, a babysitter, a house to crash in when things go wrong. If the only time your child shows interest in your life is when they want something from you, that's not a bond. That's a transaction. And at this stage in life, you should be surrounded by people who see you, not what you can offer. People who want your presence, not just your help. If your child only remembers you when it's convenient for them, it might be time to stop picking up the phone. You are not a spare tire for when life gets hard. You are not a bottomless well of patience and money and energy. You are a human being with limits and the right to say, enough. And speaking of limits, here's another sign that's easy to overlook but incredibly important. When they constantly disrespect your boundaries. Maybe you've asked them not to show up unannounced, and they do it anyway. Maybe you've said, "Please don't speak to me like that," and they roll their eyes. Maybe you've explained that you're not comfortable being involved in certain family drama, and they drag you into it regardless. Healthy relationships respect limits. Unhealthy ones bulldoze them. And when someone ignores your boundaries over and over again, what they're really saying is, "What you need doesn't matter to me." That kind of disregard eats away at your self-worth. You begin to question whether you're asking too much, when in truth you're just asking to be respected. Setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's self-care. And if they can't honor even the simplest ones, it's not a miscommunication. It's a message. It says, they're not willing to grow with you. They're not willing to consider your needs. And if that's the case, you have every right to step back and protect what matters most. Your well-being. And finally, let's talk about accountability, or the lack of it. When your child hurts you and won't apologize, when they shift blame, twist facts, or pretend nothing ever happened, that's a dangerous pattern. Because no relationship can heal without responsibility. If someone never says, "I'm sorry," if they never reflect on their actions, if they act like you're the problem every single time, then they're not interested in healing, they're interested in control. You can't build trust with someone who refuses to own their behavior, and you certainly can't have a peaceful connection with someone who constantly gaslights you into doubting your own experience. If your child refuses to take responsibility for the pain they cause, then staying close to them is like reopening a wound every single day. You deserve better. You deserve real accountability, real growth, real change. And if they're not willing to offer it, then it's not your job to keep bleeding in the name of love. Now take a deep breath with me. Let's sit with this truth for a moment. If you've listened this far, chances are your heart is heavy. You're holding a mixture of sorrow, anger, confusion, maybe even guilt. And that's okay. This isn't an easy path. No one ever dreams of needing to step back from their own child. But sometimes doing so is the most loving thing you can do. Not just for yourself, but for them too. Because sometimes the only way a person changes is when they lose the comfort of hurting you without consequence. And sometimes the only way you heal is by choosing yourself. You are not abandoning them. You are honoring the truth. You are choosing peace over chaos. You are choosing dignity over dysfunction. And you are remembering that love, real love, shouldn't leave you in pieces. So if you decide to walk away, do it with grace. Do it with your head held high. Do it not from a place of bitterness, but from a place of strength. And remember this, you still have so much life left to live. Life that deserves to be peaceful, joyful, and full of people who cherish you, just as you are. If this conversation has touched you, I hope you'll take a moment to share your story in the comments below. Someone else might be going through the same thing, and your words might be the comfort they need. If you found this helpful, please give it a like and subscribe to Strong Elderly Life for more real, supportive content like this. You don't have to go through these chapters alone. We're building a community here. A space where your voice, your experience, and your journey truly matter. Here's to honoring yourself, to choosing peace, and to living the rest of your life surrounded by love that lifts, not love that wounds. You deserve nothing less.